Welcome back, everybody. Those of you who are coming back, and welcome those of you who are new. Who's missing, I don't know. People come and go in various ways, sometimes temporary and sometimes longer. So for Hung Sure, myself, and Doug, we all had major departures this summer from family. So when that happens, when someone close to you passes on, there's a moment of sobering pause where you really viscerally feel the passing of everything that's meaningful and dear to you, and it can spur you on to really investigate what this is all about. So certainly that was the case, I think, for all three of us this summer. So I come back with I don't know if I could say I'm more sober, but at least more serious about self-cultivation. And interestingly, this particular text, because of all the texts that I've studied in the years of studying Buddhism, this to me is the most direct and most accessible of the teachings regarding the matter of human existence and what it means to be a person, what are our potentials as human beings, what are our limitations, and how we can actually directly cultivate ourselves to realize our deepest spiritual nature. And so it comes at a particularly opportune time that we're going to start this semester with the text. I'm not going to make any promises when we're going to finish. Hopefully you'll all be around by then. If I go, you just continue the class, it doesn't matter. If I pass during the class, wait till the class is over and drag me out. That's the Chan approach. So tonight you have a text that's just been newly translated. We put a team together about a year and a half ago to rework this text. We thought it would be a 3-month undertaking. It turned out to be more like, I don't know, year and a half. It was a good team, a lot of worthwhile work, a lot of hard work, and we learned a lot. So this is our newest translation of a text that dates back to the Tang Dynasty. It's not the definitive version, if there is any, nor is it to be the last. I think translations have to be renewed from generation to generation. But this is at least attempt to bring it into a more modern context and still keep the essential teachings unchanged. This being said, the format of this class hasn't changed much. So since we started it, and I don't know when we started the Friday night class, back in the late 90s maybe, so it's been a while. Essentially what we do is we do 45 minutes of sitting meditation, which we just started with, and then 45 minutes of looking into this text and discussing that. That's the essence of it. Why we preference sitting meditation, it's just one of the many practices that one can use to quiet the mind, settle the emotions, gather light and energy back that usually just is dissipated, and bring that all to a focus to start to get to know the workings of our own mind and nature. In that sense, it's contemplative or introspective. And this is a very old training spiritual discipline or spiritual exercise that actually predates the Buddha. So you can do contemplative studies in a range of meditation techniques, standing, walking, sitting, even a lying down. We don't have a class in lying down meditation. Some of you think this is the class. I noticed that in my previous classes people would lie down and sleep. But that wasn't the lying meditation. You're awake while you're lying down. You can do rituals and devotions, Pure Land practices, which include bowing repentances. And you shouldn't necessarily see these as just sort of external rituals, because they have a deep mind ground, internal aspect to them if they're done right. You can do mantras and mudras. You can do memorization techniques. You can study the text. You can cultivate the Vinaya school and develop your character and really refine your person. There's many, but this technique that we're using is just the sitting meditation technique. In some ways, it's not the easiest. In some ways, it's the most direct. So that being said, it's not the easiest because it's putting you directly in touch with your own mind and nature. There's no stages in between. There's no buffering. There's no what you would call gradations. You just sit there and look into the workings of your own mind as it's happening right now, 2014 on a Friday night in Berkeley, which can be somewhat unsettling or enlightening depending on your state of mind. But the sitting meditation technique is to bring you to that here and now workings of your mind. And this is largely the direct teaching of the Sixth Patriarch himself. He says, why don't you right now attend to your own mind and nature in this very moment? Just that attending in this very moment is all there is. So the past is past. It's not, you can't get it. The future is inaccessible too, and the present is very elusive, and most of us don't live in it anyhow. So that being said, the sitting meditation technique is a really good, direct spiritual exercise that you can take up at least if you come to the class for 45 minutes once a week on a Friday night. And not a bad thing to do with your life amid all the other things that you do. So if you have a refrigerator, you put those note things up there, put it on, Friday night, come to meditation. The second part of the class is you'll have a chance to go into a very profound and remarkable teaching, hundreds and hundreds of years old, that still has purchase, I think more purchase than most things I read. And between those two, you'll have spent a good Friday night for the continuous weeks here. What you do with the rest of your time, of course, is yours to do, but you have an opportunity now, because the monastery opens its doors to us, to do this every Friday night. So I hope you'll continue to come. My particular talks about this may or may not be interesting, illuminating, or whatnot, but if you do the meditation and you have the text, you'll go away full. So that you can count on. That being said, every semester I start with some basics of the sitting meditation practice, just because not everybody is familiar with it. Some people are new. Some people have forgotten the basics. And so I will, in the first probably 3 or 4 classes, spend 10 minutes or so at the beginning of each class, this time now, to go over basic sitting meditation practice. And this is something that I've learned from my teachers, and they learn from their teachers, and they learn from their teachers, and so forth. So it's a living tradition that's been passed along. It's very low tech. You don't need anything except your body and your mind, which, bringing those together in one place at one time may be a challenge, but you try to do it. You don't need anything special. There's nothing to plug in. I mean, we have a lot of plug-in stuff here, but this has nothing to do with meditation. All you need is a space to sit and some basic guidelines to follow, and you just take up this practice, and the result, or the working of this meditation, is a thing that you do through your own effort. Once you understand the basics, you can just do this on your own. And the more you do it, and the more diligently you do it, the more it feeds back and rewards. So it's something that is cultivated every day over the process of many years. And if we're to take the text as talking about time in another dimension, over many lifetimes. And so the introduction that we'll get to tonight introduces the Sixth Patriarch by one of his disciples. And as we read it, we'll try to you'll get a feeling like it doesn't seem like he was just born then. There must have been accumulated things going on before that moment that he came into this world. So tonight what I'll do is maybe talk about just the sitting posture. Next class we'll talk about the breathing. And then the last class we'll talk about the most difficult, which is the mind, what you do with the mind. So let's just go over the sitting really basically. This posture, if you look at statuary and icons going way, way back, you'll see a standard practice for the sitting posture that's been handed down, whether it's what we call full lotus or half lotus or cross legs. The essentials are still pretty much the same. So first is let's do 7 points on it. Sit with a solid base. So when you're sitting on the ground, this forms sort of a triangular base, and it's a very solid foundation. So you want to be grounded in that way. Now, if you're not used to sitting, or it's taken a while, or for other reasons, you might want to elevate the back under your buttocks a little bit so that you can sit straight without having tightness in the midsection, and that you can hold your spine straight. Some people can just do this on a flat surface very naturally. Some people need to elevate. So find what works for you. No pillow, 1 pillow, 2 pillows. I wouldn't go beyond 3. Because you lose the ground then. You're starting to elevate, and it's not the elevation of meditation, that kind of elevation. It's just... So I do it with 2 because over the years I've lost both of my hips, and they put in metal things. So they're not as good as the originals. They're a little stiffer, and so I have to have 2 pillows to get my right balance. So you sit with a solid base, number 1. The legs, start with, you can do what's called full lotus, or you can do the half lotus posture, or simply cross-legged. So I usually ask for a volunteer at this point. Who is sitting in full lotus? Okay, you want to? Yeah, come on up and show. Yeah, uncross, then come up. Don't come up in full lotus. Yeah, wherever. Okay, so usually you put the left leg on top of the right and the right leg on top of the left. Okay, so this is the full lotus position. Both feet are sitting on top of the thighs and close in. Now when you first start, you might crank it to getting it here and think, but gradually you want to get it. And you notice he folded his like ramen noodles, cooked. That usually isn't going to be your first experience with. Your legs are not going to feel like noodles. He takes a special drug for this, and no. There we go. And so you see he's got a solid base, the triangular base. Sometimes this is why it's called the Vajra, or diamond-like position. Both legs are on top of each other in this way. The knees are flat on the floor. So if you're starting and you can't get your knees flat on the floor, you're going to start feeling tension in here. Now, some people can do this from birth. Some people lose it at adolescence. Some people keep it all their lives. Some people feel like they have bamboo legs. And you ever try to bend bamboo? It just doesn't. So naturally, there's people who are more elastic and whatnot. But this is something you can develop with practice. Were you born this way?
No.
Okay.
Actually, when I was 14, I couldn't sit like this.
Okay. So when he was 14, he couldn't sit like this, and now you're 17. And,
not anymore.
You're older than 14, and you can't. So something between then and now allowed this to happen. So change is at the heart of the Dharma. That's what it's all about. It's all about changing. Changing body, changing emotions, changing feelings, changing insights, changing understanding, changing bad habits. Change is at the heart of this and everything we do. So this can be acquired. Now, as long as I have you up here, can you demonstrate what is half lotus? So if you can't do the full lotus, you can do a half lotus posture. And this is simply putting one leg on top of the other thigh and putting the other one underneath, and it doesn't matter what side you do it on. You might one time do it one way, another time do it the other way. And finally, cross-legged is like that. Okay? So those are the three postures. Do the one that you're comfortable starting with, but then allow yourself to push the envelope a little, stretching and becoming more nimble so you can get to half and from half to full. Okay? So on one hand, obviously he's going to say awakening, Bodhi doesn't have anything to do with how you sit. Okay, just let's be clear about it. Awakening is a state of mind, and it doesn't come just from sitting. However, thank you. The sitting meditation practice is a complement or an aid to cultivation, and it really does help, if you do it right, to gather your energy and gather your thoughts and gather your emotions and feelings, and not only purify them, but bring them to a razor-like focus through which you can start to see things as they really are, unfiltered by all the distractions that just surround us like a dust storm. Okay? So, you don't need to do it to get awakening, and you could say that all great sages who've awakened did it, perhaps, and though it might be necessary, it's not sufficient for awakening. So it's just a start. Okay, that's the sitting, the legs, number one. Number two, the hands. Left hand on the bottom, right hand on top. Let it just rest so that your forearm is resting on top of your thighs naturally. Don't hold your arms up like this. Okay, this is strained. Let them relax. When you let them sit like this, then your shoulders and chest can relax as well. Left hand bottom, right hand up top. Thumbs just gently touching like this. It just closes a circuit. That's number two. Let's see. Back. Number three, the back should be straight. The spine should be straight. Now, of course, it's not perfectly straight. Those of you who have seen x-rays know there's a little curvature, and I'm not talking about artificially making your back rigid like this post. But you'll feel when you get your back straight in a line so that you're not leaning forward like this and you're not arching backwards, but you're erect. The texts sometimes say like coins stacked on top of each other. Your vertebrae feel as if you're erect. So you have a very erect, sort of perpendicular position of your spine to the floor at a right angle. Your ears line up with your shoulders, and your shoulders line up with your hips. So you have a straight plane. Don't sit like that, okay? And don't let your ears go back forward or, or like this. So the ears, shoulders, hips form a straight plane. Now, when you're lined up like that, your arms are resting. Your head then slightly tips forward, just a slight amount. Not like this here, but just slightly down. And you look off the tip of your nose, so to speak, as an orientation point, down at about a 45-degree angle. You do not look and stare at the tip of your nose. Okay? Do not do that. You will only get a headache. And also, you'll probably have an accident driving home because your eyes won't be focused. So look off at a 45-degree angle, down towards the floor, focusing on nothing in particular. Now, here's the point. The eyes are not completely closed, nor are they open, but only slightly open, like a shade of a window that you let up, maybe a fifth of its full length, so that you can look down at that 45-degree angle. You are aware of light, but you're not focused on anything in particular. Now later, I'll explain why it's important to keep the eyes open. If you open them too much, you'll become agitated and hyper. If you close them, you'll get groggy and in a torpor-like state. So the keeping them open has to do with a keeping of a kind of a middle way physically with your awareness, so that you're in neither deep, what they call sinking into emptiness, nor in hyper-excited distraction, anxiety. Okay, so eyes, look at the nose, and so forth. Does that cover 7? Legs, arms, hands, 3, back, 4, head, 5, eyes, 6. Tongue, you slightly curl the tongue till it touches right behind your top teeth. So there's two palates, the hard palate, the soft palate. The soft palate's the one that arches way up, and the hard palate is the one that's right behind your front teeth. So you curl the tongue up just to touch gently. Just curl it gently to make contact with the hard palate behind your front teeth. And this has to do with meridians in the body and how energy moves. So you're closing off a particular central meridian and doing that, which allows the energy to circulate and flow in this way. Okay, any questions on that? Everybody clear? Over time, I will open my eyes just to look how everybody's doing in the sitting, and then I'll make some suggestions about it without pointing to you directly. So if people fall asleep, I'll say, people fell asleep tonight. And so no, I was awake and you were dreaming and you were asleep. And so when the bell woke you up and then you went back to sleep. So otherwise, sometimes people will start leaning back and start arching up because they feel some energy and they want to move it in that way. Or they'll do this. And then they'll do the one my teacher used to call chicken meditation. And chicken meditation, I grew up on a farm, so if you throw corn on the ground, the chickens go like that and peck it. So chicken meditation is this one. Right? So you're not getting any corn, but you're nodding out. And usually you can correct that by going back to the 7 points of posture, and particularly checking your eyes. Almost always, anybody who falls asleep or nods during their meditations because the eyes have gone shut before that. Okay, so that's it for that. Next week, we'll focus on the different ways of breathing, the wrong way and right way to breathe, and then finally on the third week, the essentials of what to do with regulating, controlling, and concentrating mind. And by mind, we mean feelings, thoughts, emotions, impulses, the whole gamut of what goes on in what we call mind or consciousness. Okay? So any questions on this?
Before you leave it, could you say something about sitting in a chair for people that are very stiff? Could you say something about people sitting in a chair? Sometimes in the classes that I teach, some people are older and they cannot do any of the variations of sitting in the floor.
Oh, so the question is, what about sitting in a chair? The texts are very clear. If you sit in a chair, it takes 10 lifetimes to get awakened. If you sit on a stool, it's 5. On the floor, it's pretty quick. No, So if you sit on a chair, again, the important thing is to be grounded, so your feet are flat on the floor, and your spine and your back does not touch the back of the chair, so you're sitting on the edge of the chair. So basically, you're doing everything of the 7 points, except you're not crossing the legs are going down straight. But everything else should be exactly the same. That's the only difference. So the arms, same way, the hands, the back, the spine, the tongue, the eyes. With sitting on a chair, it's exactly the same. Okay? Anything else? Okay. So, let's start a little bit tonight. And what we're going to do, we're going to start on actually page Roman numeral 1. We're going right into the heart of the text. Now, about these texts, first of all, so these are the new editions, just came out. We're going to hand them out during the class and then pick them up at the end of the class and put them back in the box so we have them here every Friday night. But if you want to get your own copy for yourself, there's a way to do that, although I don't know how to do that. How do you do that? Okay, BuddhistText.org, and you can order it online? Okay. So when you're done, even though you'll find this taut and gripping and you want to put it down, please put it in the box before you leave. Now, I used to do this, and people say, oh, can I just take it off for a week? I'll bring it back. And copies just started evaporating. So there's, anyhow. Now I put my name in my books. But I found that putting my name in my books only makes other people feel guilty. It doesn't make the book come back. So now besides putting my name in my books, I write them down in a little log. And then after a while, when I'm missing a book, I'll call somebody. Really? Yeah, you did. Really? Yeah. So don't put your name in the book and then try to find it next Friday. Okay, so here we go. A little bit about the main character here, or what we call the author, although he didn't write this. So his name is Hui Neng, and we'll go into this in the first section here. Time, anybody? 638 to 713 Common Era. 638, 713 Common Era. Long time ago. Long time ago. Really long. See, most people when I talk, because nobody studies history anymore, you'll find me lamenting this a lot, but now that I've studied it for a long time, I really realize it's useless. But I had to do that to realize it was useless, you see. When I study this and they say there is no time or space, and all time's an illusion, and I thought, well, if somebody had told me that when I first started history, I would have stopped. But I studied with the notion that time was real, and that things progressed in events and so on and so forth. So, regardless, 600, this time of, and the reason to bring this up is when you read this text from beginning to end, you go, wow, this is really remarkably profound, thoughtful, insightful, and yet very modern in its language. And you're thinking, and this was put together during the Tang Dynasty. So you have to think, what was going on at 600 to 700 in terms of rest of people this was being lectured. I mean, so the King of England was Sept. I'm sure all heard of Sept. Don't even know who he was, right? And his biggest problem in his mind was the Vikings invading. And it's not the football team. This is the Vikings, way back. So England really wasn't even England then. The Vikings hadn't even come. But that was his biggest concern. Plus beheading heretics. So in those times, if you said something that people didn't agree with, they told you to be quiet. If you didn't be quiet, they might cut out your tongue. If you started to express in other ways, then they would burn you. And that would put the end to the debate, the controversy. Let's see. Quill pens were becoming popular. That was high tech, a quill pen at that time. Everybody know what a quill pen is? Yeah, see, people are it's something you should have. A quill pen is either from a bird, like a crow, and then they shave the tip of that and they cut it in such a way, and then you dip it in ink and you write. And that was a big breakthrough. And it was becoming very, very popular. But very popular is misleading because only maybe 5% of the population could write or read. So now you're going to tell, what was the literacy rate? Well, the literacy rate was pretty low. I mean, I hand out these books to you, and you're all going, hey, wow, this is interesting. And some of you are reading the Chinese and the English. But at this time, only 2 of you in this room would have been able to look at this text and understand any of it in a population this size. Moreover, there weren't any text to really look at. I mean, this is the time that China comes out with the first printing on paper of a book in about 600 something. Okay, so there's very few things to even read that are going. Huh? Yeah, they had not scrolls. I'm talking about printed paper, in books. And the first book, as far as we know, that China did was the Vajra Sutra. So. Wow. So at this time, there really isn't much in books. There's no Google, by the way, folks. No way to search and find things, right?
Interestingly, he was contemporary of Xuanzang, to India at the time.
Right, and so if he's a contemporary of Xuanzang, to find what the Buddha was teaching and spoke, had to go to India on an incredibly difficult journey. You read about it, it's just like mind-blowing what he went through to get to India. And then when he got to India, they gave him even a worse challenge. He had to learn Sanskrit. Now, that's suffering, come on. Yeah, and he learned it. He learned it so well in a competition, he won the Sanskrit prize, which consisted of a huge thing of camphor, some special rice, and his own elephant. Not bad. Now you're thinking, what would I do with an elephant? The elephant in India at that time, that was a pretty cool prize. So that's what's going on. And then when he compiles all these texts and scrolls, he wants to bring them back to China. And he's got to pile them on donkeys and mules and, I guess, his elephant part of the way. And en route going back on some of those trails going over gorges, a mule or two would fall off with scrolls and just go down to this river, and that'd be it. And so the amount of material that he acquired versus the amount of material that he actually brought back wasn't the same. And then he had to sit down and put a whole translation project together to render these into Chinese. So this is that time when all this information is first coming in. And, Japan has just sent its first envoy to China. So they're making a formal connection. You see how... Well, in the centers were the Arab and India and China. These were the heads. I'm telling you, those of the European backgrounds, nothing to be proud of at that time. Really, we're just beyond the Neanderthals, okay, and sometimes not even beyond that. The latest research suggests that some of us were marrying Neanderthals at that time. So, I guess that was a mixed marriage of some sort early on, and bringing the Neanderthal girl from home to mother. Very primitive, comparatively to what was going on in India and China and in Arabia at this time, what we call Arabia. So this is a very early time, but I'm stressing this because this text and the teaching in this text is not in any way primitive or early or even undeveloped. In fact, it's highly developed, and in some ways, we're going to feel as we read it even a little bit beyond our contemporary abilities to make sense of things. So that's it. Let's see what else went on. Oh, another technological invention at the time you'd be interested in, the folding fan comes out at this time. There wasn't a folding fan till then. So somebody caught a bat, looked at the bat wings, thought, oh, I'm telling you the truth. This is how it happened. They looked at the bat wings and said, oh, that would be cool. And they made a folding fan. That was in Japan. So that was the sort of the technological breakthrough. He is called the Sixth Patriarch because he is the sixth descendant of patriarchs that came to China from India. So, and you'll see in the book here, you can look at the woodcuts of the previous five to make him. He's the 33rd then from the Indian descent. So he's sixth in China, that's why he's called the Sixth Patriarch, but 33rd going back to Shakyamuni Buddha in that lineage. Now, he wrote nothing because he couldn't write. He wasn't formally schooled. And he left no record of his life or any other thing like that. And the only thing we have of his life and his teaching is what's been compiled in this one work, compiled by his disciples who sat around like you're sitting around for many, I'm guessing his teaching career, I don't know how long it lasted, but probably 30 or 40 years perhaps. So 638 to 713. He taught till the end, we know that. So what would you guess this was? 40 or 50 years of teaching, because he starts late. They listened, they compiled this, they put it together. He gave them instructions to do this towards the end, and this is it. And it's called, and the reason it's called the Platform Sutra is because the majority of the text takes place when he is formally asked to ascend to the lecture platform where he gave these talks. Now that's a formal request of a teaching. So when this group of people came, of which the corpus of this is based, to request Dharma from him, they went through the formal procedure of sitting on a dais, or an elevated chair, on a platform, which is still traditionally done, and then the Dharma master speaks, or lectures, from that position. And that teaching then is called, he calls it, from that platform, that this was delivered. The other parts in here are narratives of exchanges he had with students and disciples of his throughout. And that goes into the mix too. But that's where the name Platform Sutra comes from. That's all that we have left of the Sixth Patriarch's teaching. This text that we have here was compiled in about 1291, which is now a dynasty past it's called the Yuan dynasty. And the person who compiled this version that we're looking at was a Chinese monk called Zongbao, right? And so it's called the Zongbao text. So you see, if you look at the first page, the first page here, we have the Sixth Patriarch's Dharma Jewel Platform Sutra, translated from the Chinese of Zongbao. So Zongbao is the reference to this monk who compiled it. And what we have here, just to be clear, is with ancient texts, as some of you who know study this, it's all over the map when you think you've got a definitive text or the first or the earlier version. So these notes that these disciples took were compiled. Various versions of this went out, some more complete, some more terse than others. And Zongbao himself said when he got down in about 1200 or so we're talking 500 years or so later, he said he looked at 3 versions that he considered to be pretty good. And he took those 3 and worked through them and brought them down into the one version here. So he was referring to 3 different versions that he had seen with different emphasis, different parts, and he combined them into this version. So now you're going to say, well, is it really what the Sixth Patriarch said? Well, we don't know because there's no recording. What was recorded is what they heard. And they all heard different parts that they put together. So you see it's getting a little tricky here. And he didn't write anything, and he didn't amend this or edit it himself. And so over time, these things change. A page falls out. A bug eats a page. It falls into the river. Something burns down. It's lost. Okay? In the early 1900s, another version of this text was found in a cave in northwestern China, a place called Donghuang. Now, some of you know Donghuang because that's where the next World Cup's going to be. No, I just see if everybody's awake here. What's Donghuang? Well, it's one of the major... And the paintings, yeah. Yeah. It's on the extreme in China on the Silk Road, so it's a major thoroughfare. By the way, the Silk Road was really a dynamic hub of activity at this time. There was a lot of stuff going on. And then you come on the Silk Road, you're going through the desert and whatnot, and all of a sudden you come to this magnificent hills with all these caves where monks were meditating, and they were also doing this incredible artwork and decorating the insides of the caves with these famous paintings, which you can still go see. Huh? Yeah, so you have to pay a lot to get to see it, and now it's almost completely closed. Yeah. You can see before they closed it, somebody went in photographically and captured a lot of this, and there's a number of books on this. But these paintings are mind-boggling to actually look at, and to ask why the monks were doing this, what was this about, is a whole other topic we could go into. But these are the famous Donghuang caves. Well, one of these caves was sealed off in the early 1900s. Some monk had been guarding it for a long time. To make a long story short, they knocked in this wall, broke it in, went in, and they found many manuscripts, many of which are now in the British Museum and other places, quickly taken off by Sir Oriel Stein and others. Huh?
The history that's quite sad because actually the person who guarded it didn't know what they were. He was given $1 a month and he just had them taken away. Actually, not just British, it's Russians took them, the French took them. So they
Disseminating the Dharma widely, yeah. So this is a case. So now you have this text that comes out. It's called the Donghuang version of the Sixth Patriarch Sutra. It's about 10,000 characters shorter than this version. And it's the earliest extant version that's out, dating back to about the mid-700s. So it was compiled in the mid-700s, put into this cave. Now you're saying, some people say, well, that's the original. No. You got to really understand, for example, you could take the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights and everything, and it'd be lost. And you could take a Stephen King novel, and you could bury it somewhere on Cal campus. And then, 1,000 years now, people would come and they wouldn't find anything but Stephen King. They say, this is the earliest record we have of Western civilization. Just because something was buried in a cave at a period of time doesn't mean it's the most complete version or necessarily the earliest version or the best version. So that being said, the correspondence between what's there and what's here of the two is almost exact. There's more in here than in the Dunhuang version. So how you account for that and whatnot could be, scholars spend their lives on this. Jan Polsky, the first translator of the Dunhuang version, finally came to the conclusion, he said, I could spend my life and more, and I'd never be able to definitively answer these questions. Who wrote it? When was it written? Where were all the versions floating around? Which one was definitive? And so on and so forth. So, end of that. Now, of course, with other texts, we feel much more comfortable. The Bible, we all know who wrote that. Oh, come on, guys. Now even Shakespeare is up for grabs. Was it Marlowe or Shakespeare who wrote, right? So, Western literature, who wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey? Right? See, we have so many texts that we assume there's this definitive authorship, and yet we don't really know, even in our own tradition, and that's even later than these.
How come why did a book right after he passed away?
Why did he?
Yeah. How come he didn't? Like Ananda was doing all the sutras.
Oh, this was compiled just after the passing of the teacher. They compiled it, but there are different versions and different people compiling it. So Fahai, who's taking credit for this one, may have been the work of a team, of which he used his name as the sort of lead of the team. But what happened to his version over time? You see, this is very tricky. Somebody else can get it and say he got this character wrong. And you all know with Chinese characters, this can happen. You can leave out a stroke, or you can leave out one part of it, and it's a totally different meaning. Or you can fall asleep while you're writing it, and you miss something. Or you hear it. You see, these were heard. But hearing it and seeing it are two different experiences in the Chinese language. And so again, you can have, and when we were doing our research to translate this is a, how shall I say it? This is a dark hole that you can enter and never emerge from. If you're a scholar, you just get lost in this. And there's been books written about 3 or 4 characters in this text and how you do it. So again, what you're getting is a composite, a compilation that was put together in the Yuan dynasty around 1270, 1291, based on other various versions of it floating out there, but has become more or less agreed upon since that time to now. So that's why this is called the Taizhou version. It's the one that everybody refers to at this point with minor variations. Okay, good. So there was no cloud then. There's no way to store this. There was just caves. They stored in the cave, but there's no cloud storage to bring it back from. Okay. Now, that takes us to the text. Did somebody have a question? Yes.
How did this text become called sutra when that came from the Buddha?
Well, that's an interesting question. Why is it called a sutra? So, good question. Since usually sutras are reserved for texts attributed to the Buddha or his early disciples, or some variants around that early grouping, or sometimes attributed to divine entities. But this is clearly a book, a text that comes out of China, not out of India, okay? And it comes out of a time that we know is probably 900 years past the Buddha's, depending on how you want to date the Buddha's decline and end. So it's later than the Buddha, it's not coming out of India, and yet it gets the designation title Sutra. And to my knowledge, it's the only text that comes out of the Chinese Tripitaka that's been given the title Sutra that isn't directly attributed to the Buddha or his early disciples. And what that tells me is that this is so revered and honored in the sense of being right in the what's called the mind-to-mind Dharma transmission, that it merits being called a sutra. It's not a shastra, a commentary. There's no other text I know of that gets in the Chinese Tripitaka that got that. Okay, good? All right, so the first section will go a little bit tonight, and I want to finish this so we can get right into the first chapter. But this is an introduction. Now, this introduction sometimes appears at the end, sometimes doesn't appear at all, and sometimes at the beginning. So when my teacher lectured this back at Gold Mountain Monastery in the 70s, he started with this introduction by Fa Hai, and so we kept that up by putting it in the beginning. This was one of the first texts I encountered when I first came in, and he stopped lecturing it by the time I got there, but everybody liked it so much, so then in the middle of morning ceremony, we would stop and we'd take 5 minutes and read a section of this. And then I kept that practice up, so I would go home, and then when I'd sit in the morning every day, I'd just read 5 minutes of this every day. So here, let's start. And I'll just read it. You can follow along. And this is Fa Hai's introduction. The Great Master was named Hui Neng. His father's name was Lu. His personal name was Xing Tao. His mother's name was Li. This is to tell you he's a real person, okay? He had a father and a mother, all right? He came from somewhere. It doesn't say, one day a cloud descended and this guy was here, okay? The Great Master, now here is Fa Hai's reverential term for him, was born at midnight on the 8th day of the 2nd month of the cyclical year Wushu in the 12th year of the Zhongguang reign of the Tang Dynasty. Now, I sort of said, can we leave this out? And everybody said, no, you've got to leave that in. I mean, I just say I was born December 1946. That's enough. I don't have to say who was president, who was vice president, secretary of state, and, and whether it was in the 8th day of the 2nd month of the cyclical, wow. But I guess in the Chinese tradition, this really nails it down. So there's no doubt this is what you go for. So we just put bracket 638 Common Era. Now, during his birth, an effulgent light radiated through space and a rare fragrance filled the room. At dawn, 2 foreign bhikshus, 2 foreign monks, came to visit. They said to the master's father, "We have come to name the son born to you last night. He can be called Hui Neng." The father asked, "Why should he be called Hui Neng?" And one of the bhikshus answered, "Hui, giving, means he will give the Dharma to all living beings. Neng, able means he will be able to do the Buddha's work." Having said this, they left, and no one knew where they went. Now, why does nobody know where they went? I'm just teasing out the thing here. Aha. No, and why does nobody know where they came from or where they went? Now, were they secretive, trying to cover their tracks, or is it suggesting something else here? They're not local. At the very least, we can assume that they're not local. Well, kind of get the feel here for what's going on. First of all, just go back a little bit. Everything's cool up until during his birth in effulgent light. Okay, this is not the operating room light. And a rare fragrance filled the room? That didn't happen with me, as far as I know. Okay, so right away we have 2 indications here of something out of the ordinary. A light filled the room and rare fragrance. And rare fragrance we mean must be pleasant. Okay. I'm sorry, When I was at the City of 10,000 Buddhas and I was taking care of the boys in the boys' school, they all like to play soccer. And so at night when they have to go to the Buddhist ceremony, they would kind of not go eagerly. And if there was a soccer ball along the ground, they would kick and bouncing around. So the soccer balls were black and white, like that. And so when we were in the hall, suddenly a rare fragrance filled the hall. It was skunk. And now there was sandalwood incense burning, but the rare fragrance of the skunk filled the room. Well, what this boy had done, because he had bad eyes, but he was self-conscious about wearing his glasses, so on the way to the Buddha hall, he started to kick this soccer ball, this black and white thing on the ground. Only it wasn't a soccer ball, it was a skunk. And hence the rare fragrance. So it's not that kind of rare fragrance. This is something else. And then you say foreign bhikshus. Foreign means obviously from someplace else, but maybe, i.e., not recognizable as being, quote, local, which may mean, therefore, not Chinese.
But they give him a Chinese name.
They give him a Chinese name.
Yeah.
Well, he's born in China. Well, wouldn't that be appropriate?
I guess he'd have to be really bilingual.
Well, see, if they gave him a Sanskrit name, then, what would people... Right? Here's Sumitra. Who? Well, really, they could turn it into Chinese right away. So they give him a Chinese name. But the thing is, they come and name him, which is kind of an intrusive event, if you think. My baby's been born, and there's a knock on the door, and there's these foreign shaved head guys with robes, and they're saying, he will be called. You go, right, okay. Well, I think it's indicating here that there's something significant going on beyond the ordinary. So let's go. The master said, did not nurse. Here you get another thing. Spiritual beings came in the night to nourish him with sweet dew. Whoa. So, in my classes, we can spend a lot of time or no time on this. For some people, they say, of course, he was very special. And these things happen to special people. And those who are, I would say, more of the fundamentalist science persuasion, notice how I threw that in there? Not the fundamental science persuasion, no way, couldn't have happened. This is impossible. This doesn't happen. Okay? So between the range of absolutely, I know it's for sure because it's here, and no way because I'm scientifically, there's a whole range of possibilities of how you might deal with this. And we could go into it or not. But all I'm saying in terms of the framing, Fa Hai and whoever put this together thinks it's important to tell us this for some reason. So let's just rest with that. Whether you personally believe it or not, there's more things to heaven and earth than are dreamed of in your philosophy, Horatio, says Shakespeare. In other words, when Hamlet first encounters the ghost of his father and says, my father just came and talked to me, and it was very real. And the others are saying, and then the response is, there are more things to heaven and earth that are dreamed of in your philosophy. By his philosophy, that was a science of the time. So even in our tradition, we have these events happening that we don't necessarily wrap one mind around and explain. Let's leave this. When the master grew up and reached the age of 24, he heard lines from a sutra and realized a spiritual awakening. He then went to Huangmei to have his awakening confirmed. Okay, so he, not reading, remember, he's illiterate. Later, the text will explain how this event actually happened. But he's just simply saying, at the age of 24, he heard a line or two from a sutra, because somebody might have been teaching it or speaking it, but he didn't read it. And he had immediately a spiritual awakening. And then he went, why did he go? There, the fifth patriarch, who was at this place called Huangmei, measured his capacity and trusted him with the robe and Dharma, making him the next patriarch. This occurred in the first year of Lungxiang reign period, cyclical year, again, getting the dates down. He then returned to the south and went into hiding for 16 years. And we'll just stop there for tonight. Now, if the introduction's not exactly what you thought the class was going to be about, be patient, because when we get to the first chapter, we really will get into the heart of this. However, there's already elements here to indicate so much is going on with this particular individual, the signs or the indications around his birth. But then he is getting this teaching confirmation. And later I want to spend some time on this because it says he was entrusted with the robe and bowl. What was the language we used here? entrusted with the robe and the Dharma. In other words, there's going to be a phrase in here that you see used in the Chan and Zen schools about getting the transmission. So-and-so got the transmission of something else. And then they were empowered. We don't use this language here. We've retranslated that, and I think with not just because the language allows us to do that, but because I think the concept's important. He wasn't given the Dharma. Okay? There's nothing magical about that. He was entrusted with the symbols of having understood the Dharma, which is the robe and the bowl. But he wasn't given this in some secret way. Because if we hold that the Dharma was transmitted in this secret way, then we're all wasting our time here. We're wasting our time reading this, but we're wasting our time listening to me, because I'm not going to transmit the Dharma, in some secret way. That's not how the Dharma works. It's understood. It's not like a gift or a special thing that's given. So he receives symbols of having understood. This is very, very important to understand as this goes on. And in fact, he himself does not hand along the robe and bowl anymore. So the robe and bowl was handed by that patriarch to the previous patriarch, whatnot, going back. He stops giving the robe and bowl as symbols. And it has something to do with this last line. He went into hiding for 16 years. This is his postdoc. Why did he go into hiding for 16 years? He gets the transmission, he gets the robe and bowl, he's ready to launch, and he hides for 16 years. What's that about? Very beautiful bowl. He definitely had some rivals. And we'll go into that too, what the rivalry is about, and he almost loses his life. So this is, the children who read this book all remember the stories, because this is rich with stories. They don't remember anything about the essential nature or afflictions or bodhi or anything like this, but, oh yeah, there's a great story where he hid under the rock, and and the bandit came and tried to cut off his head, and he couldn't do it. You remember it? No, that was it, just great stories. So those of you who like great stories, there's great stories here. Those of you who want something a little more deep, there's that here too. Those of you who want something you can't understand that's totally inexplicable, that's here too. And so we'll get all of that in the course of time, but we'll stop for tonight. We'll convene again next Friday and finish up the introduction and then go right into the first chapter. Okay. I'm certainly not up to speed. I'm still, my heart and mind are still in the kayak in Maine. And it's really, every summer I come back and I can't even find words and language again. It's really hard. I would go out every day for 8 or 10 hours, and the only beings I talked to were loons and a mandrake duck and a moose. And so after 3 weeks of that, it's really hard to come back and talk to a class and try to make sense of anything. So I apologize if I babbled or whatnot tonight. I guarantee as the moose and the goose and they all become distant, I will focus more on this. But I hope that you all too had a chance to unplug this summer. And I mean that at every level. If not, do it now. If all you can do is Friday night for an hour and a half unplug, then come here and do it. And if you only come here and you don't listen to the text, and you don't listen to me, and you just sit here for an hour and a half, it's okay. You will have gained 45 minutes of precious life back. So come every Friday night and unplug. Any announcements? God, that's old-fashioned, isn't it? Posters.
We also have a low-frequency email list. So if you want to get some updates, feel free to leave your email. Very low frequency.
Yeah, it's like some of my students are like, what's email? They're already past, they don't even use email any. It's got to be more instant. So what's more instant than email? Even text is, okay. Okay, so email, there's an email list if you want to get on. If there's a change in the class or some night we can't hold it for some reason, you can always check that list. If you want to get your own copies of books, you can do it online. Otherwise, I'm really looking forward to this, coming back after all these years to this text. And I must say that in translating it, I really began to appreciate it in a way I never did before. So you could say I lecture slowly to give you a chance to appreciate it and savor the taste. Okay. All right. What we do at the end, we do a transference of merit for the class, transfer it, and it's sung in English, and then we bow, and that'll do it. Do we have handouts for people who don't know the transference? One of the features of this semester's class, we've gotten rid of the big screen. And I was thinking of using it, and everybody said, no, go to the books, go to the books. And everybody's just spacing out, staring at the screen. And I realized it's probably true, but I don't stare at it because I have my back to it, so I didn't realize it. Here I thought I was being high-tech, we'll do the screen. Everybody wanted to go back to books, so. Now we'll hand out the sheets for the English. May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity, may their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless light. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Ding li san